everyone, my name is Andillon Hackney and I work at UC San Diego. I've been in prospect development for 17 years and have more than my fair share of close calls in the red flag department. So let's get started. Warning signs on a prospect. So over many years I've encountered criminals trying to bilk nonprofits, Ponzi schemers, pedophiles, SEC violators who wanted to name a children's hospital, religious organizations who wanted to proselytize through the creation of an academic department, and shysters preying on students. It's happened at the 3 organizations that I've worked, so it is inescapable. There's a difference between vetting and due diligence, though, and I really recommend Lindsay Nadeau's prospect vetting article in Apra's September 2019 Connections for more about vetting. Because it's one thing to make sure a prospect is the right fit for leadership, like your CEO or lead in advancement. It's another to accept $10 million from an organization that seems sketchy. What I'm going to talk about is more about that sketchy element and falls under the category of due diligence and protecting your leadership and organization from people who prey upon nonprofits. I've spent countless hours researching a prospect, going over the same territory to find information that was not findable. For the person I researched, I likely spent 3 whole days only to discover nothing. At this organization, unfortunately, they accepted a gift from this particular individual despite my findings of nothing. There was nothing to find. The end result was the organization budgeted for $10 million that never came, and 6 people were laid off as a result. I am sure I am unique in this situation, but it taught me how important this work is and why you as a prospect researcher need to be clear and communicate quickly to leadership. So at UC San Diego, we've had maybe 3 of these kinds of requests in a very short period of time. We had a cult try and name an academic department. We had someone preying on students, and we had another entering our chancellor's office saying they were going to give him $1 million. In all these cases, we were the go-to to find out more. In all these cases, we were able to communicate our findings effectively, and leadership listened and took action, or in some cases, did nothing, which was perfect. We as the research team realized that they had all the commonalities, so we developed a list that we then shared with all development officers who were actually really grateful for the insights. So let's talk about how these red flags will manifest. Number 1, they're going to have immediate need to meet with leadership. Number 2, a large amount of money is almost always at stake, $1 million or more. Number 3, this comes out of nowhere, and there's no affiliation. They're not donors. They're not alumni. Number 4, they want access to leaders, faculty, students, physicians, whoever are your subject matter experts at your organization. Number 5, they're going to name drop. And lastly, the development officer is going to have a gut feeling. Now, I know some of you may groan on this one. Honestly, in my experience, that's the one that really counts. We have a drop everything rule when these red flags are present. Because there's such a time crunch, we try to get this info out before development officer heads too far down the path. So we want to stop them from accepting a proposal for $10 million. Okay, so what are you going to find in the data on the research side? There's no giving at all. The names are confusing or interchangeable. There are no assets. The facts are not adding up. So for instance, they say they work somewhere. You go to look for that information and you can't find it. They say they're a doctor at a university and you can't find that either. They also may use a P.O. box, or their address is confusing. There's something about their address that's not right. This is where I would stop and take a breath and take a different tact. So I'm going to give you some examples. The Ponzi schemer that I worked on used his first and middle name, not his last name. And when I uncovered that, it was like a light opened up and I could see a whole trail of his illegal activities. Counter to that, I had someone with a common name who appeared on a news notice as a convicted pedophile, and I had to figure out if this was really the right person. That required a trip to the police station when Megan's Law database could only be accessed there. 2 conversations with a detective, and finally a long conversation with a parole officer who, as it turns out, was very concerned about his parolee giving money and attending events at a children's organization. Because of this research, I found I was able to write a report, sent upward through our vice president to the CEO and council, who ultimately refunded the money to this individual, asking he not come back to the organization. There are real-world consequences to this kind of research. For others, aside from Epstein and the college admission scandal, St. Mary's was duped by a $100 million scam in 2004. There's many examples. I'm giving you these three, but those are what I would use if you're having pushback from a development officer about this. Okay, so what are you going to do? You're going to research until you can articulate the issues, and by that I mean you're going to articulate what you cannot find. You're going to report it to all the parties, your advancement leadership, your boss, whoever needs to know to move it upward. You're going to flag this person in your database with lots of do nots so that they are never contacted again. And you're going to make them not a prospect if you have that ability in your database. When we make someone not a prospect, we use a standard phrase. This prospect is a liability to our organization. Please see media and interactions. We don't want to yell out what the problem is in our database. We want to point the development officer in the direction of the documentation so they can take a look for themselves. One of my colleagues, my Apra colleagues, told me that they thought the language I used was really strong, but then I told them my pedophile story and they were like, oh, okay, I get it. So I will tell you it works. When a development officer sees this, it either causes a phone call or they reach out for more information. The silver lining for you is that once you go through one of these fire drills, your development officers are going to come to value you even more than they did before. They may not want to hear your findings, but it will build your shop's credibility in your organization. Lastly, I hope this helps you save time, and just know that our field has encountered this many, many times. It's just another aspect of our job. I sure hope you don't have as many as I've had, but if in doubt, reach out to your local colleagues or your local Apra chapter or board. For the cult trying to buy themselves in academic naming, we reached out to other researchers at 2 other universities, and sure enough, they had been scammed. One had rejected, and the other one had accepted the proposal and was dealing with the repercussions. It pays to use your network. Thanks again for listening to Apra Bytes.